What's up guys, Tim Little. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today's video, we are talking about summer bass fishing and why a lot of anglers struggle fishing during the heat. Many bass fishermen struggle during the summer months because the bass behavior changes dramatically. As water temperatures rise, oxygen levels drop, bait fish are moving around, they're relocating. So a lot of times we're finding ourselves fishing where the fish aren't, right? The fish typically move to deeper water. They move to water that has more oxygen in it because that's where the bait fish are going. So if you're a guy that has found himself struggling out fishing in the heat of summer, the middle of summer, today's video is for you. So I struggle too, right? Last time I was out, just yesterday, the water temp was 93 degrees. These fish need cooler water, they need oxygen. If you are fishing shallow, they need grass that's up shallow, that's lively, producing oxygen. That way there's life around it. But this time of the year, the dead of summer, the heat of summer, a lot of bass fishermen struggle catching fish because they're fishing dead water. Fish don't stop biting, they just stop biting where you've been used to fishing, right? Where you've been fishing up until now, up until the struggle bus, the fish have been biting. But as we get those higher water temps and that DO, that dissolved oxygen, the amount of oxygen in the water, these fish disappear, they change, they relocate. So I got 5 tips for you guys, then we'll cover some key baits. But just to kind of give you guys some confidence, give you guys some help, because really this is, I'm gonna say this is probably now the toughest time of the entire year to catch a fish. Now don't get me wrong, you can still go out and blast them. You just have to be in the key areas, the right areas. We'll talk about some bite windows, some timing, that sort of stuff. But don't get your head down. You know, these fish have been fished for now for 7 or 8 months, right? If you're on a fishery that doesn't ice over, these fish have probably been fished for now for as long as the season's been going. So these fish have seen a lot of baits. They've seen a lot of techniques. They're getting smarter. They're getting more pressured. And then you throw in the top, you know, to top it off, you throw in the conditions. There's a lot of things going against you, but if you can find those fish and you're the one that finds those fish, you can still have a ball out there catching summertime bass. So if you're tired of getting skunked and you want to beat that summer heat, you're not alone. I'm right there with you. Like I said, yesterday was 92, 93 water temps, a heat index of like 102, 103, and it was a struggle. It was mentally challenging. You always want to make sure you have the right gear, make sure you got enough water. But tip number 1, fish deep structure. Now, like I said a little bit earlier, if you are a shallow water fisherman, if you're a guy that loves throwing a frog and a buzz bait and all that sort of stuff, more power to you. I'm one of those guys, but make sure that you're fishing around lively vegetation. You know, a lot of times, unfortunately, this time of the year, you'll see the airboats out spraying and killing a lot of the grass. That's huge here on the Tennessee River. So finding fish up shallow, they're going to be on that lively grass. You know, you might have an entire grass flat that now has been sprayed and those fish are going to vacate. That sucks, but it's part of what we do. If you can find key areas with lively vegetation, listen to the pads, listen for those pops, those little bluegill. Just look and listen for life. If you can find lively mats, lively grass, you will still find bass. But for the most part, fish deep structure. Now, with the water temps going up, those fish typically go down. They like to be down just above the thermocline, right? Where that water temp changes, there's more oxygen, there's that more dissolved oxygen in the water. But outside humps, outside ledges, deep brush piles, deep grass lines, that's where I'm focusing most of my time. Unless I have an awesome cheese mat up shallow where those fish are still lively, I'm starting out deep, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for outside edges. If I am fishing a river system, I'm looking for where that river comes close to the shoreline and you have some bluff walls, but fish deep. Those fish like to be in that cooler, more oxygenated water. Now, when you're fishing those deep humps, edges, rock piles, main lake points, I have some key baits, and I'm gonna actually do that towards the end. We'll wrap it up with all the baits. But typically, the middle of the day, I'm fishing finesse, whether it's a jig or a shaky head or a Carolina rig. You know, if it's early morning or late evening when you get those lower light levels, you know, lower light, those fish tend to get active, and we're going to talk about that here shortly too. But for the most part, when I am fishing deep, I'm fishing finesse. I'm slowing down, I'm dragging. You know, those fish aren't necessarily as active throughout the entire day as they have been, you know, during the cooler months of the year. Tip number 2, if you have them, use your electronics. You know, this Humminbird, side imaging, whatever brand you have, use your electronics to find those key offshore spots. Whether it's a main lake point with a little chunk rock over here or a little hard spot, those fish are going to be relating to that hard structure, that hard bottom. So if you have them, use your electronics. I spend a ton of time in the console, in the, you know, pilot seat, if you will, the driver's seat, looking at my electronics. Granted, I'm here on the Tennessee River where it's a lot of ledge fishing, a lot of offshore fishing, but whether you're on a clear highland reservoir or a murky lowland reservoir, use your electronics, because, you know, these days you can scan 150 feet, 200 feet out off of port on the starboard side of the boat, and you can find those grass lines. You can find those deep pieces of structure that those fish are going to relate to. So if you have them, use your electronics, guys. It's never more important than right now as you're trying to find these offshore fish, right? You don't necessarily need them on or even use them when you're up shallow fishing because you're visibly seeing what you're casting to. But if you can, when you get out deep, use your electronics. You know, there's a tip for you guys. Turn up your sensitivity on your 2D and you will find that thermocline. You'll find kind of that fuzziness in the water column. You know, it could be down 15 feet, it could be down 30 feet, depending on your fishery. But just remember, those fish relate to that thermocline. Just above it, they sit for that clear, that cooler water, more oxygenated water. So I spend a lot of time in that cockpit, or whatever you want to call it, the driver's seat, staring at my electronics, trying to find those offshore key locations. Okay. Now, if you're a guy that doesn't have electronics, spend some time on Google Earth, spend some time on maps, and hopefully you have a fishery that's got some clear water and you can see where, you know, trees have fallen in, or you can see high spots or the color line. You can see where that break is, and that will key you in on those key areas to fish as well. But again, quick tip, guys, if this time of the year, if you're not around lively water, right, if you're not around the bait, most likely you're not around the bass. Okay, tip number 3. This time of the year, now that we're into August, it is hot, it's scorching. Doesn't matter where you are in the country. A lot of guys will go up north, up there, St. Lawrence River, upper, you know, UP, Michigan, whatever, to find some cooler water, to find some cooler weather. I'm one of those guys. I love it. Tip for you guys, if you can, fish early and fish late. Now, in previous videos in the beginning of summer, I told you that some of my best topwater bites, my best frog bites, were in the middle of the day. High sun, small shade lines, it really isolates those fish into those key shade lines. But now that that water temp has come all the way up, I've noticed in my fishing those lower light times of day, periods of day, have really increased the activity of the bass. Now today we have an overcast day, so that kind of throws a wrench into all that. But on a typical sunny day, a lot of my bites are coming early morning, and they're coming an hour and a half to, you know, 20 minutes before the sun sets. Okay, those fish will get active, they'll start chasing. You know, I've been fishing for them all day. with a jig or a wobblehead or a jig and minnow, and now they're coming up, they're chasing. Now I'm catching them on a flutter spoon or a topwater. Again, we're gonna talk about baits here shortly, but just understand that these fish turn off and on, and you might only have a 15, 20, 30-minute window, but those low light windows seem to turn on those bite windows. So if you can, fish early and fish late. Again, as that sun rises, those fish are getting active. Cooler water, it's cooled down all night. If you have some overnight lows that are getting down below like 80 degrees or so, but the water is going to be the coolest. It's going to be all day, and those fish are typically more active. And then again in the evening, as that sun starts setting, those fish get active. Those bait fish come up to the surface, they start popping, and then all of a sudden you start seeing boils and blow-ups and bombs dropping, and you can catch those fish on fast-moving reaction baits. So feeding off of tip number 3, tip number 4, slow down. You know, most of the year, Matt and I are preaching speed up, right? Speed kills. We're speed cranking. We're throwing quick moving baits. We're trying to tap into that bass's predatory instinct to hunt down, chase, hunt down, and eat. They don't like to do that this time of the year, especially with that warmer weather, warmer water, higher water temps, lower oxygen. They just don't want to chase as much. So for the most part, middle of the day, I'm throwing finesse baits like I just talked about earlier: a jig, a wobblehead, a shaky head, maybe even a mag shaky head, Carolina rig, that sort of stuff. I'm still fishing the key areas. I'm just changing up my presentations. You know, earlier in the year, I might have been throwing a mag crankbait. I might have been throwing, you know, a hair jig or a big flutter spoon. As these fish kind of slow down, you yourself need to slow down and fish finesse baits. Now, I'm not saying you have to throw little microscopic stuff or a drop shot or anything like that. You can still throw big presentations. Just slow down, and a lot of times those fish are down there on bottom, not being very active, and you can catch them switching from reaction to finesse. Again, shaky head, Carolina rig, Texas rig, wobblehead, that sort of stuff really works this time of the year. All right, the last tip that I have, tip number 5, basically is super simple, but a lot of people miss it this time of the year. Find the bait, find the bass. So if you find the bait, follow the bait. A lot of times these fish are moving around with the bait. Like I said earlier, you get that sun setting, the bait fish kind of come up to the surface, they're more active, and then all of a sudden the bass get active. They're coming up, they're schooling, they're blowing up, where you just fish for 8, 9, 10 hours throughout the entire day and didn't even get as much as a sniff on your bait. Now all of a sudden you have blow-ups and boils going on all around you. You're throwing a topwater out or a flutter spoon or a jigging spoon, and now you're catching them every cast. So follow the bait and you will find the bass. Now with that said, let's talk about baits that I throw throughout the day, and then let's talk about baits I throw in those low light conditions, because they do change. So this time of the year, a jig, right? Whether it's a 1/2 ounce, 5/8, this is a Dirty Jigs. I have a little Crush City trailer on there, a lot of action. It's got a stout hook on it. That's an awesome jig, but I'm throwing a heavy jig. I'm down there fishing in and around that structure. Rock piles, brush piles, laydowns. Again, I'm not getting super active. Beginning of summer, I might be cracking a jig or hopping a jig. This time of the year, I'm kind of dragging, popping up, letting it fall. But a jig produces a lot of big bites, especially this time of the year. I'm not a big jig fisherman, but this time of the year, I absolutely love throwing a jig. Number 2, the worm. Specifically, a shaky head. You know, a shaky head in a June bug color, that's actually the Deception worm by X-Zone. Specifically this worm, why I love this worm, you guys have heard us talk about it in videos past, but this has like a neutral buoyancy. It floats a lot like the Z-Man products. So when you are fishing slow and you are down there dragging this shaky head, that tail is standing up. Okay, there's a lot of other brands out there where they're heavy salt or they just don't have the right combination, so that tail just lays down when you're doing nothing with it. But having that guy right there, having that tail up there dancing, I can fish it as slow as I want. I can soak it. I can fish it in and around that brush pile. I can soak it, and that tail's just up there just slowly wagging. But it's weedless. I can fish it in and around grass lines. I can fish it on offshore stuff. And that thing really, really produces for me. If you're a guy that wants to upsize and throw a larger shaky head, that's the Oki worm by Yamamoto. 10-inch worm. Again, just a big beefy straight tail worm that works really good on a mag shaky head. So you don't necessarily have to downsize this time of the year, just slow down. And then you guys that want to throw like a curly tail worm or a ribbon tail worm on a Carolina rig or a Texas rig. This is that Blitz worm. It's 11 inches. Again, I'm going with June bug colors. I'll link all the stuff down below in the video description. But being able to throw a larger profile presentation and drag it slowly works extremely well this time of the year. And you night fishermen, going to your favorite locations, your favorite community holes or whatever, throwing a jig, throwing a big worm, will produce bites this time of the year when sometimes those fish aren't active during the day. All right, now let's talk about if they are active. I still have all these baits tied on. I always have them. I always have my top water cocked and loaded. Basically, the bait is ready to be casted at any moment. I could be offshore on my favorite point, my favorite rock pile, dragging that big Blitz worm, and then all of a sudden they come up schooling. I can burn that in. I can pick up my top water rod, throw it right there on the boil, and start walking it and try and get that fish's attention, get it pulled away from that shad or bait fish it's chasing, and eat my bait. So with that said, top water. This guy right here is the Jowler. It's a 127 size. Don't quote me on it, but it's a full size top water. It's got a good knock in it. And this thing has the cupped lips, so it has a lot of splash to it. Now, low light conditions, evening time, those fish come up, they start busting, they start boiling. It is really, really important to be accurate with your casts. If it's a solo fish chasing a solo bait fish, let's just say a shad or a gizzard shad, it's really hard to convert that fish because it's so keyed in on that individual bait. Unless you can see which way it's going, if it's cutting left or cutting right, you can lead it or get that fish's attention away from that real bait to eat your bait. It can happen. That's why I like that Jowler. Again, it's got a loud knocker in it. It throws a lot of water, and it can get that fish's attention away from chasing that single bait. Again, you have to be extremely on time and on point with your casts. With that said, sometimes this time of the year, they like that subtle top water. So if there's a school of fish that come up, I might throw the big Jowler in there. A lot of times this time of the year, there's no ripple. It's just high sun. It's just dead. Throwing that Giant Dog X is probably the best finesse top water that I've thrown, okay? Real subtle knock. It has a real nice walk. This thing really shines when there's no ripple on the water or it's calm out and there's nothing going on. With that said, another tip for you guys, if you are on your spot and you're not using your electronics and you're spot locked, turn off your electronics. You don't need that extra transducers pinging everywhere, okay? That also affects the fish. But being silent or being semi-silent, close to silent, real subtle, that is an awesome, awesome little topwater bait. Again, it comes to play in those schooling fish conditions as well. I have both of those tied on. Couple other ones for you. A crank. I can't do a summer fishing video without talking about throwing a crankbait. That's that DT20. That's an awesome summertime deep diving crank from Rapala. If those fish are active and they're down there in that 17, 18, 20 foot range, that is a good way to see if they are active. Get it down there, dredge it through them, burn, 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 pause, really get it down there through them and see if they're active. If they're active, they're gonna eat it. If not, you might have to switch over and fish with a worm or a jig. Two other baits for you real quick. That same top water time, that same scenario when those fish are active, the bait fish are up, a lot of times they won't come to the surface, but you can see the disturbances out there. If you have forward facing, you can see them out there swimming around chasing. A flutter spoon is hard to beat. You know, you throw it out there, this thing is just, it's falling down, it's doing big wide glides. It mimics a dying bait fish, and a lot of times those fish will eat it on the initial fall. If you get it down to bottom, let it sit, hop, hop, let it fall, walk it down on semi-taut line, it's just dong. For whatever reason, they will eat a big chunk of metal when they won't eat some of the other stuff. Okay, and then last but not least, another bait that I have always tied on is a version, some kind of underspin. Whether it's this little guy right here, little 2.75 swammer, all the way up to a full-size 5-inch swim bait. But I always have a blade. I'm always throwing an underspin, especially when these fish, like we talked about, they're relating to bait. So you want that fish to see that flash, to see that vibration, to feel that vibration, and an underspin is key for me. So those are my baits. Those are my key tips for you. Guys, don't get down on yourselves if you're riding the struggle bus. Fishing during the heat can be extremely, it's hard on the body. Sometimes it can be hard on the psyche, but hopefully these tips will give you the confidence to get back out there and try. I'll link all these products down below in the video description. Favorite colors, favorite stuff, favorite techniques, all that good stuff. We got a Blackhawk coming over the top of us. All right, guys, hopefully that video gives you some confidence to get out and get off of that struggle bus if you've been struggling. If you've been whacking them, more power to you. You guys have already dialed it in. But a lot of us, especially in the end of summer, the middle of summer, the heat of summer, it can get tough if you don't follow those fish or find those fish. So hopefully these tips give you guys the confidence to get off that struggle bus and get out on the water and find some fish. Down below in the comment section, I want to hear some of your toughest summertime challenges. What challenges you on your fishery? And down below in the video description, I will be sure to link all of the products I talked about, favorite colors, rigging, all that good stuff. But guys, summertime fishing, it can be tough, but it can be amazing as well. Just like in the dead of winter, often I find myself the only trailer at the boat ramp. I have the lake to myself. It might take me a little while to find the fish, but using these tips, I promise you will help you guys shorten the learning curve, or shorten the window to find those fish. But down below, let me hear some of those comments. Hit that like button. We appreciate the support. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and we will see you guys on the next video.